Any words of advice, Phil, before I begin?
Don't f it up.
So in this video, we are going to be making some artisanal bread, which is pretty much just fancy talk for like a baguette. So we're going to start off with 3.5 cups of bread flour. You can use any type of flour you want.
Bread flour?
But for bread, I think bread flour is probably the most appropriate. 3. The recipe says 3.5. I'm only going to put in 3 right now because when we need, we are going to find whether or not it's too sticky or not sticky enough. So we're going to put in some salt, 1.5 teaspoons, and then just mix that up a little bit so that way the salt is mixed in with the flour. And then we are going to be adding in our yeast. I am using the Active Dry Yeast. So we have our 3 cups of flour, our 1.5 Tbsp of salt, and our packet of yeast. And then we are going to be adding in 1.25 cups of warm water. This encourages the yeast growth as it is proofing. Got our measuring cup right here. Let it heat up. It doesn't have to be precise. Pour that in the center. They always recommend that you pour out the dough into the sides so to make a well. And this is so that it's a little easier to mix up the water so it's not just pooled on one side. So mix it up. Try not to break your spoon or dump flour everywhere. And then we are just going to be mixing this up. And if you recall, I said I only put in 3 of the 3.5 cups. So 3.5 would have been probably a little too much in this initial stage. See a little bit of extra flour right here. I'll mix that here in a second. Just keep mixing. It's always good to have someone on hand to wipe your brow when you get the bread sweats, so you can really focus on the bread.
I don't enjoy doing that.
Okay, we got this pretty much mixed up right here. The next step that we're going to be doing is kneading it on the counter. Sprinkle a little flour down here on your workspace, and then plop that sucker right down. Put a little bit on top there too. Just start kneading it. I like to use the heel of the hand a lot to really spread it out. So that way you get it nice and thin. You can fold it and repeat. And you'll want to do this for about 5 or 10 minutes. You definitely want it to be a nice even structure. You can see in here there's a little bit of like dry bits of bread. And you want to make sure that the moisture from the water you added gets evenly distributed. Just keep doing that for about 5 minutes or so. Okay, so after you've kneaded it for 5 to 10 minutes, form it into a nice little round, and you push it, it should be sort of springy like that. We're gonna add a little bit of canola oil to this, just a splash, not so much. Cover it in oil. Gotta absorb those tasty fats, you know. And then we're going to let this sit for about 1.5 to 2 hours in a warm spot, usually until about it's doubled in size. We're gonna cover it with a tea towel and wait for about 1.5 hours before we check in on it. See you then. And here you can see it's definitely plumped up quite nicely.
That's pleasant.
But before you do anything with that, you should pour yourself a nice glass of tequila. That's good. Yeah, it's good tequila. So now we're going to sprinkle our workstation out with a little bit of flour. We're going to punch the dough, get that air out of it.
Come on, Will, put your childhood into it.
And what we're going to do is we're going to split it into 3 portions.
What if you can't count?
And then you should probably just keep it in one. A little more flour there. We want this to be thin and long, so that way it bakes a little more easily and doesn't have to overcook. In whatever dish you so choose to bake stuff, we're gonna lightly flour it, and then we're going to put our baton of bread in there. We're just gonna do 2 of the 3 loaves right now, but you could make all 3 if you wanted to. The nice thing is, since you have this extra dough, you can refrigerate it for at least 1 week, maybe 2. And it'll continue rising, albeit a lot more slowly than the refrigerator, but you can just
like the sound.
You can just, the bread will rise again. You can just let it heat up to room temperature and use it again like this freshly made bread, and it'll work just fine. Next thing we're gonna do is make a wash. So we're gonna take a teaspoon corn starch, We're gonna take a teaspoon of salt, and then we're gonna add a tablespoon of water to that. All right, once we have all those ingredients in place, we are going to mix it up. The cornstarch is gonna be a little tough, which is fine. That's how cornstarch is. And then, once we get that all diluted, we're gonna add in a half cup of water. Okay, and we're going to stir that up and then boil it. Add it to a saucepan, and we're gonna bring that to a boil. The oven, we're gonna wanna set to normally 400 degrees Fahrenheit, and just keep a close eye on the bread as it bakes. All right, our mixture came to a boil. You don't want it to boil for too long, just enough so bubbles are going. And then we're going to be using a pastry brush to apply our salt cornstarch solution to the bread. So this is gonna give the bread its nice brown coat, give it some extra character, I believe. So we're actually gonna do this several times. Right now, just the once, and then in about 10-minute increments while it's in the oven. This is coat number 1. Okay, just about ready to go into the oven. The only thing we need to do prior to that is get some sort of dish. We're gonna fill it with a little bit of water, not too much. And we're gonna put this in the bottom of the oven. And what this is gonna do is create a nice moist environment that's gonna help brown the bread. We put in our bread, you want it to be about in the middle rack so that way it's not too high, doesn't get burnt by the oven. We're gonna check on it again in 10 minutes. It's gonna cook in total for about 35 to 40 minutes, but every 10-minute increments, we're going to apply our cornstarch and salt solution to it. So we'll check on it again here in 10 minutes. All right, so it's been about 10 minutes, so we're gonna take a look at the bread. It's coming along very nicely. It's got a nice golden hue there. So we're gonna go ahead and take our salt cornstarch mixture and go ahead and apply that. Get the entire surface so that way everything that's exposed gets nice and golden. Don't be scared if it doesn't look very pretty. At the end of the day, you're gonna be cutting it into slices anyway.
Oh, shit. Those look fine. Fine ass bread.
All right, the bread has been baking for about 45 minutes now, and I think it's ready to come out. If we tip it over, careful of course, tap it with like a knife or something, you should be able to hear a nice hollow sound, and you'll know it's done. There isn't any dough in there that is uncooked. So, that's how you make the artisanal French baguette. You should probably wait about 10-15 minutes to let that cool. These ones are a little smaller than most loaves, so it's not gonna take too long. And that's pretty good cooking. So, yep, enjoy.